Here's what the doctors aren't telling you about smoking. They're following a conventional approach to addiction that looks at as addiction as a disease that needs to be treated, only looking at smoking as the problem. That's why they're prescribing. But the reality is that smoking addiction, or any addiction really, is a spiritual crisis. I don't mean that necessarily in a religious sense. I mean that in your sense of self, your outlook on the world, and your connection with others, with nature, with yourself. When those things aren't there, they're not in balance, that's how you get addiction. The disease model never worked for me because it didn't give me power. It didn't give me choice. It made me feel helpless, which is kind of how I felt in this world. I used to think that I lived in an accidental universe where everything was survival of the fittest and competition. I felt like I couldn't make the changes I wanted to in society, that I had no voice in our institutions. Even though what I saw disgusted me, I couldn't make a difference. And this kind of thinking is what got me so hard into addiction and kept me stuck there. So this kind of rational clinical approach to quitting didn't make any sense to me. The doctors are missing the main thing here, is that addiction is emotional. People smoke when they're going through something. They're having an unwanted emotion, they have a craving, they smoke. It's not just about physical chemical dependency, which does suck, but it only lasts a few days with smoking. So why do people go back to smoking a few days later, weeks later, months later, years later? It's something in them that feels incomplete, and they look to smoking, they look to their addiction to fulfill. And our medical doctors just aren't equipped to handle this. They look at one specific problem and they treat that as if it's isolated. They take a rational approach, lays out numbers that clearly indicate that smoking's a bad idea. Every time I went to the doctor, I got shame, I got guilt, and I got fear. I got treated like I was stupid for making the choice to smoke, and that all I had to do was get smart to quit. But smokers aren't stupid. Everybody that starts knows that it has toxicity and puts strain on the body. They start because they're looking for something in life, something more meaningful. Addicts are seekers. They want something more than just paying bills and going to work and following the traffic rules. They want to feel something. And doctors are so cold and clinical. There's a serious disconnect there, which is unfortunate because a lot of people to quit need emotional support in some form, even if they're just learning how to do it for themselves. That's why I do the work that I do, because I want to give people an option to try something other than the disease model, because it just didn't work for me. I got caught myself in that trap for years, thinking that I was just weak or dumb or not good enough. Even though I worked in science, I knew the numbers. It wasn't enough to convince me. It had to be a spiritual connection where I came into my own self-worth and my own power and my own choice, and chose to quit smoking, not out of guilt or fear, because I knew I deserved a better life. And I knew that smoking didn't fulfill that void in me. So I could let it go and make room for things that do fulfill me. I learned to connect to my genuine self and not care what people wanted me to do, the things that were making me miserable and want to hurt myself, and instead follow my own tuition and my own heart's guidance, which was loving, patient, forgiving. And it wasn't the easy way. I get why people want to take shortcuts, but there's a reason why they often don't work for smokers. It takes self-awareness, it takes inner work, and it takes a connection to something meaningful and genuine in this world where reality is becoming less and less apparent. So I wrote down the ideas that helped me break through my ego, the shell of who I am, and find out what I'm really about, and find my own inner gold, my own inner wisdom, love, worth. And it's called Honor Your Heart. I learned these ideas in ancient wisdom in the form of myths. There's a reason why these stories have persisted over time, and people have passed them on to generations and generations. People used to understand what it meant to be human, and it wasn't damaging ourselves and popping full of pills hoping it gets better. We don't need the doctors to shame us. We can heal ourselves through self-understanding and a willingness to grow and change. I know you can quit smoking.